Good evening, everyone. I show it at 6 o'clock. My name is Greg Sayre. I am the administrative law judge assigned to this case. Welcome to the information session and public statement hearing in the Empire Offshore Wind case, case 21T0366. Before we go into the public statement hearing, we're going to have two presentations describing this case. One from the Department of Public Service staff explaining the process of this case, and a second from the applicant Empire Offshore Wind describing itself and the project. I'll now yield the floor to DPS staff for the first presentation.
Thank you, Judge Sayre. I'm just going to share my screen. So good evening. My name is Jessie Shaw, and I'm an Excelsior Fellow in the Office of General Counsel at the Department of Public Service. Thank you for coming to the public statement hearing this evening for Empire Offshore Wind. This presentation will provide an overview of the Public Service Law, Article 7, which governs the Empire Wind project, and it will also give details of the project itself. So to give a little background, Article 7 applies to major electric lines, which is defined in the Public Service Law as a transmission line with a capacity of 125 kilovolts or more that's at least 1 mile in length, or a line that has the capacity of 100 kilovolts or more and is at least 10 miles in length. So for context, the Empire Wind project will involve the construction of approximately 17.5 miles of 230 kilovolt line. Article 7 was originally passed by the New York State Legislature in 1970 and established new facility siting procedures to minimize environmental impacts. These impacts include impacts to forests, streams, wetlands, land use conflicts, agricultural land disturbance, and historic resources. Article 7 also implemented procedures to minimize quality of life impacts, which would include construction disturbance, traffic, dust, operating effects, noise, visual impacts, things like that. Article 7 also established a forum to resolve issues that could include the location of the line and different matters of local law. Article 7 also creates an open process that involves state agencies, municipalities, citizen groups, and interest groups. Article 7 is not subject to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, or SEQRA, but it still requires similar environmental analysis of the impacts of the project and requires minimization of those impacts and allows for public participation. So an entity must submit an application under Article 7, which includes, the application includes general information about the project, a description of the location of the project, a description of the project's facilities, reasonable alternatives considered, environmental impacts, design drawings, economic effects of the proposed facilities, any local ordinances that may apply to the project, and the cost of the proposed facility. The application is provided to municipalities that will include, counties, cities, towns. It's also provided to state legislators and state agencies. And the application is available online to the public at the website that is provided on this screen. So each application is first docketed by a case number. In this case, the case number provided for Empire Wind is 21T0366. You can use this number to find the application on the DPS website. And the New York State Public Service Commission, or the PSC, is the decision-making board responsible for reviewing Article 7 applications. And then the Department of Public Service, or DPS, is the state agency that works for the PSC chair and participates also in the review of the application. So DPS consists of a staff team of engineers, environmental staff, economists, legal counsel, consumer outreach, and administrative law judges. Along with DPS staff and the applicant, parties to the Article 7 proceeding can include multiple state agencies, such as the Department of Environmental Conservation, Department of Agriculture and Markets, or the Department of State. Others may also join as a party to the proceeding by requesting intervener status. Interveners typically include municipalities of where the line is proposed or residents of those municipalities, and it can also include environmental or public interest groups. Parties to a proceeding have rights and obligations, so they are required to comply with procedural rules and directives of administrative law judges, but they have the right to engage in discovery, present expert testimony, participate in evidentiary hearings, file motions and legal briefs, and participate in settlement negotiations. An applicant is required to establish an intervener fund, which is available to municipalities and other parties intervening in the proceeding to be used for retaining expert witnesses, retaining consultants or lawyers, or otherwise used in a way that contributes to making an informed decision as to the appropriateness of the site or facility. The purpose of the funds is to encourage a broad public participation. So Empire Wind's application includes an intervener fund. It's up to $100,000, and notice of the intervener funding was issued on January 25th of this year. At least half of that total fund is available specifically to municipal parties, and the remainder is left for other parties. So while the funds may be used for legal fees, they cannot be used to legally challenge a decision that is made by the Public Service Commission. So this is an overview of the typical timeline for an Article 7 case. First, a newspaper notice is published prior to filing the application. Next, the application is filed, and that was done on June 30th of last year. And any supplements to the application will also be filed. In order for a case to move forward, the application must be determined to be complete. And in this case, the application was determined complete on January 24th of this year. Public statement hearings, like the two scheduled today, one this afternoon, or earlier this afternoon, and this one in the evening, must be held within 60 to 90 days after the application is deemed complete. And a procedural conference for this project was also scheduled on February 28th of this year. So this is an outline of the typical steps if a case is going to go the litigation route. First, there will be an identification of alternate routes. The applicant will pre-file direct testimony along with DPS staff and any interveners. In this case, Empire Wind pre-filed direct testimony on June 30th of last year. All parties to the proceeding will then pre-file rebuttal testimony. There will be evidentiary hearings and site visits as needed, and the parties will submit initial briefs followed by reply briefs. After the briefing, the administrative law judges will issue a recommended decision. The parties will then file briefs on any exceptions to the recommended decision. And finally, the Public Service Commission will issue their decision. So now I'm going to go into more detail about the process of the litigated case. The case is broken down into three phases: the evidentiary phase, the briefing phase, and the decision phase. I did want to note that in 2020, Article 7 was amended to require the Public Service Commission to issue a decision 12 months after an application is determined compliant or when the compliance letter is issued. So all three phases will need to be completed before or within this 12-month time frame. I will note, though, if settlement negotiations begin, the 12-month clock is told for the amount of times that the parties are in settlement. So to provide an explanation of the three phases, first is the evidentiary phase, as I mentioned. This is when the applicant and the other parties to the proceeding present their direct case. The parties will also respond to other parties in rebuttal, and settlement may occur during the evidentiary phase. Parties will also exchange discovery requests to gather more information on the project. During the briefing phase, parties will summarize the evidence and their arguments presented. And the schedules for evidentiary and briefing phases are developed after settlement negotiations end. So lastly, there is the decision phase, and this is when the administrative law judges will review the information in the record and the arguments in the briefs and prepare an analysis of the issues. The judges may issue a recommended decision, or RD, to the Public Service Commission. The parties to the case will then reply to the RD and dispute any of the judge's analyses and recommendations. And the parties are usually also given the opportunity to dispute the conclusions of other parties as well. The commission will then review everything and issue an order with an explanation of their decision. A party may appeal the commission's decision within 30 days and seek a rehearing, but only parties to the proceeding can appeal the commission decision. So in issuing its decision, the commission is required to make certain findings, including the basis for the need for the facility, the nature of probable environmental impacts, and the efforts made to minimize the facility's impacts on agricultural lands, wetlands, parks, rivers, etc. The commission must also make findings that the facility has a minimum adverse impact on farming operations. They must make findings of whether any part of the project should be completed underground, findings that the project conforms with the long-range electric plans, and that the project conforms with state and local laws. The commission can also waive local laws or requirements that are considered to be unreasonably restrictive. So an example of a local law that may be considered unreasonably restrictive is a maximum building height limit. When a proposed utility pole is going to exceed that height limit. Another example would be a restriction on certain types of fencing or signage that is required around the electrical equipment for public safety reasons. So local laws such as these will be waived for the project. And overall, the commission must find the facility will serve the public interest, convenience, and necessity. The commission has several options when issuing its decision. So it may grant the certificate with appropriate conditions, and these conditions may include impact mitigation measures or alternate locations or alternate designs. It may also approve proposed settlement if applicable, or it can deny an application if the facility is not needed or if the commission is not able to make its required findings. If the commission does grant the certificate, the applicant is required to provide very detailed plans called the Environmental Management and Construction Plan, or EMNCP. The EMNCP includes everything that is needed to construct the project, and copies of the EMNCP are distributed in the same manner as the application and are subject to review and comment by both the parties and the public. The public may also view the filed EMNCP on the Public Service Commission's website. The Commission must then approve of the EMNCP and may require additional conditions. After the EMNCP is approved, the certificate holder will acquire the needed rights-of-way and property rights, and construction will begin in accordance with the approved EMNCP. After the facility is completely constructed, site restoration begins. That's also outlined in the EMNCP, and the right-of-way will continue to be managed for the life of the project in accordance with the most current long-term right-of-way vegetation management plan, and that plan is also approved by the Commission. So you are able to review the Empire Wind application online at the Public Service Commission's website provided on this slide. Again, the case number is 21T0366. There is additionally a guide to the certification review process, links to other Article 7 cases, and Article 7 regulations on the PSC website. And if you would like to file a comment, there are a couple ways to do so. You may make a statement orally today at the public statement hearing. You may also write to the Public Service Commission. The address to do so is provided here on the slide. You can also write a statement by email, emailing the Commission, again, provided here on the slide, or calling the number on the slide. Just if you're leaving a comment by letter, email, or phone, just be sure to reference the case number so that we know which project you're referring to. All comments will be summarized and posted onto DMM on the PSC website under the Public Comments tab for the case. So thank you so much for joining us today and participating in this important process.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shah. I will now yield the floor to the applicant to describe itself and give more details about this specific project.
All right, very good. So I'll kick us off. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present today. I'm Harrison Foyer, and I'm the New York Director of Public Affairs for Equinor Renewables US. I want to begin by giving a broad overview before I turn it over to Joshua Verloon, Equinor's Article 7 manager. Let's go to the next slide. So today we will introduce Equinor. We'll provide you with a project overview of Empire 1 and how we interact with our project communities. We'll cover our project timeline and how to get involved in public processes, and we'll offer some time for Q&A. Let's go to the next slide, please. So Equinor is a broad energy company, and our headquarters are in Norway. We have over 20,000 employees worldwide, and we've been in the US since the 1980s with offices in Stamford, Boston, Houston, Washington, DC, and Brooklyn, New York. Let's go to the next slide, please. So we are a values-driven company. We're committed to net zero targets for 2050. We're committed to cutting emissions from all of our activities and investing ambitiously in renewables. And we're driven by our values. We're open, we're courageous, we're collaborative and caring. And for Equinor, how we deliver is just as important as what we deliver. Let's go to the next slide, please. So Equinor has clear ambitions to be a leader in the energy transition, and we have more than a decade of experience in offshore wind. And to that end, we've partnered with other leading companies in the energy transition around the globe. And this map gives a good view of the scale of our commitment in the US as well as our global aspirations. Next slide. So our values drive our community-based development model and inform our commitments for how we work with local communities. And through that, we show respect for the environment. We've prioritized engaging and communicating actively with stakeholders. And part of why we want to engage with stakeholders early, even if we don't have all the answers, we want to focus on creating local jobs, working with local unions, investing in local communities, sourcing in New York and the US wherever possible, collaborating with fisheries, environmental justice communities, frontline and tribal communities. And overall, we want to be transparent. Let's go to the next slide, please. So Equinor is honored to have been chosen by New York State to supply clean and local offshore wind energy to the largest population center on the East Coast. And the Empire and Beacon wind projects are a 50-50 joint venture between Equinor and BP, with Equinor as the operator. And as you can see here in red, we're developing two projects for New York, Empire Wind in 2 phases and Beacon Wind 1. Together, these projects will power around 2 million homes. Today's presentation will focus on Empire 1, and as part of our commitment to the region, Equinor will also invest in workforce and economic development initiatives, as well as supporting regional environmental monitoring and research. And I should note that we are still very early in setting the process for identifying and managing these investments, and we look forward to engaging the public more as they take shape in the coming months. Next slide, please. So New York State has the most ambitious clean energy goals in the country, including procuring 70% of the state's energy from renewable resources by 2030. Offshore wind will contribute significantly to meeting that target, and Equinor will play a major role in helping New York State reach its goals. Our two projects, Empire Wind and Beacon Wind, will provide 3.3 gigawatts towards that 9 gigawatt goal. Let's go to the next slide, please. So offshore wind is responsibly developed in close collaboration with communities to ensure minimal potential impacts. We do extensive environmental and social impacts evaluation to minimize the effects on wildlife and local communities, and that happens long before we get started. We consistently engage with local fisheries, and their feedback has helped inform decisions that the project has made. And we work in close collaboration with the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management and the Department of Defense to mitigate any potential interference with coastal defense and radar. Next slide, please. We're also building the workforce of the future to support this growing industry. And our efforts to date include building relationships with local academic institutions and labor leaders, serving on the industry advisory board for Farmingdale State College, collaborating with Stony Brook University on marine research to broaden science on offshore wind, identifying local suppliers and training opportunities with local partners, and we're focused on a just transition to ensure that workers at risk of being left behind are included in the new clean energy economy. We continue to engage in local partnerships as this is crucial to how we develop our projects responsibly and with input from the community. And to that end, as COVID recedes, we're excited to be back in the field, and we have various in-person and virtual workshops planned for the spring and summer across all of our project communities. Let's go to the final slide on this part of the presentation, please. Thank you very much. So we plan to continue hosting public meetings virtually and in person across New York City and Long Island in the coming months. So please follow us on social media to stay on top of all of our upcoming opportunities. Our Twitter handle is Equinor Wind US, and it's regularly updated with the latest events that we have scheduled. We'll have upcoming workshops, which will be a great opportunity for the community to learn about the projects, as well as for us to hear from the community. And additional opportunities for you to get engaged outside of the permitting process are via our hotline and our virtual open house comment form, both of which are listed on this slide. So I'll give everyone a moment to take that information down. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. And with that, I would like to turn the presentation over to Joshua Verloon.
Thank you so much, Harrison, and good evening, everyone. I'm Josh Verloon. I am the Article 7 manager from Equinor's permitting team. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the Empire Wind 1 project, about the permitting process, how this fits within the broader federal, state, and local permitting for Empire Wind. Next slide, please. So this slide up on the screen depicts the full schedule for Empire Wind's permitting. As mentioned by Harrison, in addition to the state Article 7 process, there is a robust federal process that is ongoing related to the offshore wind lease area, as well as the transmission line and onshore portions of the project. Looking at the graph, you can see that it's kind of segmented into two sections. There's the environmental assessments and permitting application development section, which took place between 2017 and 2020 heading into 2021. There were extensive wildlife, marine, and other surveys that were done in 2019. Empire Wind 1 was awarded a contract by NYSERDA for the offtake from the power, and federal permitting began in 2020. As mentioned earlier, the Article 7 for Empire Wind 1 was submitted in June of 2021, and we expect permitting to sort of conclude or wrap up between the end of 2023 and beginning of 2024, when construction will then commence. Next slide. So some key facts about Empire Wind 1, as well as a very brief overview of how it fits in with Empire Wind 2, which is the second phase of the project. So Empire Wind 1 was awarded an offtake from NYSERDA, which is the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, in 2019. That was for 816 megawatts. Phase 2 of the project, Empire Wind 2, which will be interconnecting into Long Island, was awarded an offtake award in 2022. And you can see on the map that Empire Wind 1 is the portion of the lease area that is closer to the shore, closer to New York and New Jersey. So the lease area is located approximately 15 to 30 miles southeast of Long Island. The proposed interconnection for the submarine transmission line, which will bring all of the power ashore, is at the Con Edison Gowanus substation in Brooklyn, New York. We are proposing an operations and maintenance base in South Brooklyn at the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, which is also where the site of the onshore substation for the project will be located. And first power is expected in the mid-2020s. Next slide. So here we are presenting an overview of the proposed transmission line and routing for the Empire Wind 1 project. The project will utilize two 230 kilovolt submarine export cables from the wind farm. That export cable, 17.4 miles are within New York State waters. The landfall is at the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal. where those 230 kV export cables will be connected into an onshore substation, which steps the voltage up to 345 kilovolts for interconnection into the broader New York City grid. From the onshore substation at the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, there is a short interconnection cable that runs out of South Brooklyn Marine Terminal along New York City streets and connects into the Con Edison Gowanus substation, which is an existing substation in Brooklyn, New York. Next slide. This slide presents an overview and a high-level sort of aerial map of sort of the onshore portion where the cables will come ashore at South Brooklyn Marine Terminal and where the onshore substation will be located. If you're looking at the map, there are two orange lines that are running through the water. Those are the export cables where they reach shore. Then they transition into the site where the onshore substation will be located, which is in the red sort of diagram. And then there's another blue line that exits the red shape, runs out of the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal area onto the street and towards, there's an orange triangle, which represents the point of interconnection. So when the cables make landfall, they will be pulled directly through the bulkhead, terminate into the onshore substation. The substation is proposed to be approximately 4.8 acres. It will be security fenced, protected as it's high voltage equipment. The total acreage for the workspace during construction will be 9 acres. The substation will use a gas insulated design, and on the substation site, we will have buildings for GIS and control, reactive compensation, and harmonic filtering. Next slide. So this slide just presents some examples of the types of equipment that will be used during installation of the export cables in the submarine environment. Up on the top left, we see a cable lay vessel of the type that will be used to lay the cables. It shows some of the various tools that will be used to embed the export cable into the seabed, including a jet plow and a vehicle capable of doing simultaneous lay and burial of the cable, as well as sort of post-cable covering of the burial of the cable. We also show some shallow water installation methods, and these are kind of purpose-built tools that will be utilized in different portions of the submarine export cable, depending on environmental and subsea conditions. Next slide. Here we also have some examples of the types of construction methodology, including what will be used for crossing of utilities and the railroad that's existing on the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal site. The main installation method for the onshore portions of the cable is proposed to be an open cut with a concrete duct bank that will be buried approximately 3 feet below the ground surface. For areas where we would need to cross existing infrastructure like the railroad or some other existing utility, a jack and bore methodology would be used. Next slide. So that brings me to the end of the overall presentation on Equinor and on the Empire Wind 1 project. I will hand it back to Judge Sayer and DPS staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that presentation. We now have an opportunity for the members of the audience to ask questions, and we have some automated methods for you all to effectively raise your hands so that we can identify you and unmute you and allow you to ask your question. We are displaying now, for those of you who are on computers, a slide that shows how to access the raise hand function of this particular WebEx software. You look for a little icon that has a hand on it. It's usually toward the lower right of your screen. You might have to move your cursor around a little bit to find it. If you are online with a computer screen and you would like to ask a question, please find that icon and click it now.
Judge, I don't see any raised hands.
We have another way of identifying who would like to ask a question for people who are just on the telephone and don't have computer screen access. If you're on the telephone and you would like to ask a question at this time, please hit *3 on your telephone now.
Judge, no one has identified themselves.
Okay, let's wait another minute or so and let people either find the raised hand icon or hit *3. And if no one has questions at this time, we'll move into the on the record public statements. Well, I thank the presenters for their clear and concise presentations. It looks like we don't have any questions. Our court reporter tonight is Howard Hubbard. Mr. Hubbard, are you ready to go on the record?
I am ready.
Let's go on the record.
Okay, one moment. Okay, we are on the record.
I call case 21T0366, application of Empire Offshore Wind, LLC, for a certificate of environmental compatibility and public need for the construction of approximately 17.5 miles of transmission lines from the boundary of New York State territorial waters to a point of interconnection in Brooklyn, Kings County. Good evening and welcome. We're here this evening for a public statement hearing that was noticed on March 1st of 2022. This public statement hearing concerns an application by Empire Offshore Wind LLC for authority to construct the New York State jurisdictional portion of the cable landing from its proposed Empire 1 offshore wind farm. Immediately previous to this public statement hearing, we had an informational session in which the Department of Public Service staff outlined the process of the case, and the applicant Empire Offshore Wind gave us an overview of itself and of the project. In a nutshell, and for the record, the New York jurisdictional part of this project starts 3 nautical miles offshore and consists of two 230 kilovolt high voltage alternating current cables to a cable landing in Brooklyn, about 0.3 miles of onshore cable, an onshore substation to be constructed at the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, and 2 345 kilovolt cables from the new substation to the existing Gowanus substation owned by Consolidated Edison Company of New York. There would also be an operations and maintenance base next to the substation. The public statement hearings that we held earlier today at 1 p.m. and are holding now are intended for comments on this proposed project. My name is Greg Sayre. I am an administrative law judge for the Department of Public Service. I'm responsible for presiding over the hearings in this case and the development of a complete record in these proceedings. Empire Offshore Wind's application is currently before the New York Public Service Commission, which consists of 7 commissioners. The commission may approve, reject, or modify the application as staff explained in the information session. We are honored to have one of the commissioners with us on this call, John Maggiore. Commissioner Maggiore, would you like to make some remarks?
Thank you, Judge Sayre. I'm pleased to be participating in this tonight. I am here to listen. I very much am looking forward to what anyone has to say tonight, and I would like to thank everybody who has decided to participate in this forum. So that's all I'm going to say, Judge, and once again, I appreciate you for giving me the opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you, Commissioner Maggiore. Now I'll explain the process that we're going to follow this evening. The purpose of our hearing is to provide you with an opportunity to tell the Commission your thoughts on the proposed project. The statements you make today will become part of the case record. We have a court reporter joining us who will prepare a transcript of the hearing, which will be included in the official record of this proceeding so that your comments can be considered by the members of the Commission. When it is ready, the transcript will be available for view on the Department of Public Service website. This hearing is not an evidentiary hearing with cross-examination or a question and answer session, but a forum to hear comments from you. This is not your only opportunity for comment. If you did not pre-register to speak at today's hearing, but you would like your views included in the record, there are a variety of other ways to comment that were listed in the public notice for today's event and were also briefly explained by DPS staff. For those of you with computer access, we're showing a slide with the other ways to comment, and all of the details are in the March 1 public notice for today's event. You can submit comments by going straight to the department's website and typing in your comments there or attaching them, or submit them to the secretary by email, or send them by regular mail, or even by telephone. Regardless of how the comments are submitted, they will be given equal consideration. Comments may be submitted and will be considered throughout the pendency of this proceeding. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we are holding this public statement hearing virtually. Normally, if this were an in-person public statement hearing, people would be allowed to sign up to make statements as they come into the hearing room and as long as the hearing is going on. But in this hearing, we cannot easily identify people as they get on the line to listen to the hearing. So as a result, as we stated in the public notice, we asked people to pre-register if they wish to make a public statement at today's hearing. We have 3 people who have pre-registered and signed up, and I believe are participating electronically or possibly by phone. If you're going to speak after we call your name, please use only one audio input and one audio output at your end. Otherwise, we may experience problems with feedback when you are speaking. You also need to be sure that you have unmuted your line, either your computer or your telephone, or both as the case may be, at your end. I will proceed now to call the people who have pre-registered to speak. Please speak slowly and clearly so that the court reporter can accurately capture your statement for the record. Our first speaker is Mariah Dignan.
Ms. Dignan, your line has been unmuted.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Judge, Commissioner, and DPS staff for this opportunity to say a few words about the Empire Wind 1 project. My name is Mariah Dignan. I am the Regional Director on Long Island for Climate Jobs New York. We are a statewide labor coalition representing 2.6 million working New Yorkers, all united in advancing a pro-worker and pro-climate agenda. And at the forefront of that agenda is making sure that offshore wind is developed responsibly. This project, the facility and related onshore work, will undoubtedly serve the public interest and is necessary to meet our climate action goals, notably our 9,000 megawatt goal of offshore wind energy by 2035. In addition, the project and related onshore work and construction must be done with good union family sustaining jobs, and we look forward to working with the applicant to make this clean energy economy a reality through a just transition for not only our workforce, but also our communities. Thank you again for the opportunity to comment, and we look forward to seeing this project through to the finish line.
Thank you very much for your comment. Our next registered speaker is Fred Valkman. I do not see Mr. Valkman in our list of computer-based attendees, but if you are on the phone or if you happen to have logged in under someone else's computer name, please either raise your hand by hitting the raise hand icon or hit *3 on your telephone if that's how you're calling in. Calling Fred Valkman.
Your line is unmuted.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Judge Sayre, Commissioner Majori, and Commission staff for the opportunity to testify today in support of the Empire Wind 1 Article 7 application. Again, my name is Fred Zalkman. I'm the director of the New York Offshore Wind Alliance. We're a collaboration involving the nation's leading developers of offshore wind projects, including Equinor, national environmental organizations, labor, and academia joined to support a vibrant and responsible offshore wind market in New York State. The Empire Wind 1 project is a seminal offshore wind facility that will provide significant economic and environmental benefits to the state of New York for years to come. The approval of Empire Wind's state jurisdictional transmission line connecting the offshore wind farm to the New York grid in Gowanus, Brooklyn, and bringing clean and renewable power directly to the greater New York metropolitan region is a critical milestone in the project's development and should be granted by the Public Service Commission as in the public interest. The project was selected in the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority's first solicitation for offshore wind in 2019, an intensely competitive process that revealed the project's superior economic value to ratepayers, contribution to the state's overall economic vitality, and specifically to the state's ambition to become the U.S. center of gravity for the emerging offshore wind industry, and for the project developers' sound plans for safeguarding the ocean environment. With a nameplate capacity of 816 megawatts, the project will lay a foundation for the achievement of New York's nation-leading goal of 9 gigawatts of offshore wind development by 2035, and demonstrate the critical role that offshore wind can play in meeting the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act's ambitious goals of decarbonizing the New York grid by 2040. Among the project's defining achievements will be the green reindustrialization of the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, reinvigorating this once vibrant waterfront as one of the East Coast's preeminent ports for the pre-assembly and staging of offshore wind components before these components are transited out to sea. South Brooklyn Marine Terminal will also host the Empire Wind operations and maintenance function. To support these activities, Empire Wind is investing millions of dollars in workforce development and community benefit initiatives. Altogether, these investments will create a significant new economic opportunity for Sunset Park, Brooklyn, and pay dividends for New York at large. For all these reasons, the New York Offshore Wind Alliance requests that the Commission grant a certificate of environmental compatibility and public need for the Empire Wind 1 project. This concludes my testimony. Thank you for your consideration of these views.
And
Excuse
thank
me.
you for your comments. If you could please hit *3 one more time, that will effectively unraise your hand.
Well, one moment. This is a court reporter. I need the spelling of this gentleman's last name.
Sure. That's Fred Zalkman, and the last name is spelled Z as in zebra, A-L, C as in Charles, M-A-N.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Our next registered speaker is Tom Baraka.
Your line has been unmuted, Mr. Baraka.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you for this opportunity to testify in front of the commission. My name is Thomas Baraka. I'm currently employed with the Office of Economic Development at Stony Brook University. In that capacity, we look at energy projects such as offshore wind and the economic benefits of those projects. Equinor has been very receptive to working with academia and businesses on Long Island on Empire 1 and Empire 2 projects. And we look forward to engaging them for collaborative research and engaging our students in the process. I'm a longtime energy professional in Long Island. And in that capacity, I have over 29 years experience with transmission and distribution reliability engineering, research and development in the clean energy space. And this project presents many good benefits to the electric grid of downstate New York. One of the key benefits I see is its proximity to the New York City load center. Offshore wind by nature is located out to sea, and this project did an excellent job of siting the project with enough distance from land on Long Island, but at the same time, close proximity to the Long Island and New York City load centers, which are in need of clean energy, as mentioned before. What I want to express my support for the project in terms of the environmental impact. The project has been very well conceived and thought out. Obviously been vetted with a lot of stakeholders on the environmental community. I've attended several of Equinor's community outreach meetings on the project, and they were well thought out, well presented, and very transparent, and were well received by the audience. In addition, I'm a resident of Long Island, and as a private citizen, speak in favor of looking out at clean energy off the shores of Long Beach and Lido Beach. At this point, I'll conclude my remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. That completes the list of the people who have pre-registered, but we have some additional time. And I'd like to give people who did not register in advance an opportunity to speak. I'll start with people who are participating electronically. As I mentioned before, you'll need to find an icon on your screen that looks a little like a hand, usually around the lower right of the screen. Click on that now, and Ms. Vega from our Consumer Services Office, who is running this meeting, will find you in the participant list, call your name, and unmute you. When she calls your name, please go ahead, spell your name for the court reporter, and make your statement. And when you're finished speaking, please click on that hand again to unraise your hand. So anyone on computers who would like to make a statement, please click the raise hand icon now.
Judge, I do not see any raised hands.
Next, we'll go to people who are participating by telephone, who did not register in advance but would like to speak. If you wish to speak, please press *3 now on your telephone. Ms. Vega will find the people requesting to speak. We won't have your names, and there may be several requests at once, so please make sure to wait until you hear a beep or are notified that your line has been unmuted before you speak. Also, please be sure you've unmuted your phone at your end and identify yourself and spell your name for the court reporter. So anyone on the telephone who would like to make a statement at this time, please hit *3 now.
Judge, no one has identified themselves.
Well, we'll wait another 30 seconds for people to consider if they wish to speak, either by clicking the raise hand icon or by hitting *3 on their telephone. It looks like there are no further speaking requests, so we can proceed to wrap up this hearing. I want to remind members of the public that they may submit public comments throughout these proceedings by the other means described earlier and in the notice of public statement hearing issued on March 1st. I thank the commenters for their participation. I thank Commissioner Majori for participating, Xenia Vega and Jill Wasser from our Consumer Services Office for administering this session, and our court reporter, Howard Hubbard. This hearing is now concluded. We'll go off the record.
Okay, one moment.
Thank you.
Okay, we are off the record.